This is the great pleasure for me to present the paper that is devoted to AHP Anp-based risk assessment customization. So the main problem that me and my friend from India was confronted with is that although AHP Anp is applied in risk assessment, it normally is applied by means of fundamental Satis scale. So the only scale applied for this is fundamental scale of the technique, and this scale is of linear nature, so it doesn't make it possible to take into account different attitudes of decision makers towards risks. And as you probably know, there are three different attitudes in decision making with regard to risk. So one can be risk averse, one can be neutrally attituded towards risk, and one can be also trying to make risky decisions. So in our opinion, the linear scale of Sati is the right one for this case. So when we have got a neutral attitude of decision maker towards risk, and we tried to expand the application of AHP Anp for those two different types of attitudes to make it possible to justify the application of AHP and ANP for risk assessment when we have got a decision maker which is either risk averse or has inclination toward risk. So to do it happen, to make it happen, we have chosen to apply different alternative scales that are also available for AHP Anp. So those scales are in general non-linear. So the only one AHP Anp scale, in fact, is linear. So this linear scale, we think, is the best choice for this typical risk assessment when we have got neutral attitude to risk. And we thought that if we could apply alternative scales that are either concave or convex, we can also cover those two types of risk attitude. So we tried to indicate the most suitable scales, one that is of a convex nature and the other one that is of concave nature. We have analyzed, hopefully, all the scales that are available. So the scales that are low point scales, so these are the scales whose maximum level is expressed by judgment that is lower than 9. Regular judgment scales, so the scales that have exactly judgment 9 for the highest scale level, and also, this is a mistake here, high point, not regular, but high point scales. So the scales which judge the highest level of the scale by means of using value that is over 9, that is greater than 9. To compare those different scales, we have applied a transformation of judgments. So all the scales after this transformation have judgments that belonged to the interval from 0 to 1, when where 1 denoted the judgment, the relative judgment applied for the highest scale level, and all other judgments were transformed to be relatively similar to the exact ratio between the judgment and the highest possible judgment according to a given scale. So after this transformation, we could compare different scales. So for the low point judgment scales, you can see that there are 3 scales that are concave here. So these are the scales L1, L2, and L3. Of course, those scales are connected to the researchers that proposed them. Regular judgment scales are mainly, besides the linear Satis scale, convex, and high point judgment scales are only convex. After the analysis of the flow of the functions that give judgments of those scales, we have made our mind to choose 2 scales. So one scale is scale L3, that is basically the scale of logarithmic nature proposed by Isahp et al. And this is the concave scale, and the convex scale chosen by us was scale H6, which was proposed by Lutzma et al. And is the scale of convex nature. So to illustrate the application of those different scales, we've chosen the example when we wanted to assess 5 different risk categories. We have applied judgment metrics with the following judgments, which of course are related to the application of linear Satis scale, and we have obtained the results for this scale. And then we have also repeated those calculations for 2 chosen scales. So once for the scale proposed by Isahp, the concave scale, and at the second stage by using the scale of proposed by Lutzma, the geometric scale. And of course, those judgments that you see here were the other one pertaining to those different scales. And using the following scheme, so we just replaced the judgments pertaining to Satis scale, but judgments pertaining to the same levels. But for the other 2 scales, we have obtained the following results. Those results were obtained for scale L3 and H6. And we also wanted to make sure if those initially applied or identified to scales, one concave L3 and the other one convex H6, are really behaving better than other scales, and it proved so. So those calculations also make us sure that those 2 alternative judgment scales are good for taking into account non-standard attitudes towards risks. So after the detailed comparison of results, the results of this comparison told us that those 2 scales give just extreme results that are extremely different from the results that other scales provide, and especially the scale by Satie. And just going to conclusions. So, in our opinion, the application of alternative AHP ANP judgment scales isn't exploited well till now, especially in the risk assessment. So this is why we think that the application of specially chosen scales would be the good turn into the direction of making also the application of alternative scales more popular, or it make it possible to exploit the full potential that crisp AHP ANP scales do provide. And final conclusions. So AHP ANP is very often applied for risk assessment, and the availability of alternative judgment scales makes it also more justified to take into account different attitudes towards risks in the more justified manner. But we are also aware of some drawbacks of our proposal. So in future, we want also to make more detailed analysis to make more sure, or objectively sure, that the choices we make with regard to the alternative scales applied for taking into account different non-standard risk attitudes are fully justified. Thank you for your attention. And if you have some questions, I will also try to.
Thank you very much, Grzegorz. I am sorry if I pronounce your name correctly.
Oh, it's Grzegorz, just Grzegorz.
Grzegorz. Thank you.
Very good, very nice.
Thank you. There are two questions. One is from Sergey, the other one is from Luis. Sergey, please, you ask your question to Mr. Jinder.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Good. So when you unified the scales, have you considered the fact that the scale with more grades is a bit more informative, so it might have to be assigned a greater weight when aggregating?
As you can see on this example, different scales give different results, of course, but in reality we have applied original versions, not the unified versions. So those results pertain to actual judgments, not the transformed judgments into the interval from 0 to 1.
But can you, is it like how to say, valid, this comparison, like comparing results obtained using different scales, as these scales have different informative content, like the degree of their detail?
Okay, so I think that you mean the range of judgments. They are very different, yeah? Am I right? Because the geometric scale can give for the highest judgment scale level the judgment of, I think it's 200 or more. And for example, Isahp's scale gives a number of 3, for example. Are you concerned with this issue in your question?
I don't see Sergey anymore. Maybe he just dropped. Let's skip to Luis's question, Jinda, and then when Sergey comes back, we can ask him again.
Okay. Yeah.
Luis, please ask your question.
Thank you. I was wondering on the practical applications of these different scales, because it seems to me that you are assuming that you know, or the decision maker or the participants knows his or her attitude towards risk, but that may not be the case. In my experience, that is very difficult beforehand, especially with a complex problem. So just taking the example of Chiara's presentation, the attitude towards risk in such a complex problem, it's very difficult to elicit. So how do you suggest we could try or test these different scales, like in some sort of sensitivity analysis, or in the very practical sense? What's your opinion on that? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, but I think that it depends on the one that is actually interested in the decision make. Maybe the best choice would be to use different scales and then confront the decision maker with the results. Maybe so, because me and my friend from India didn't want it just to force somebody to use the scale, the given scale. We thought that it would be interesting to see how those different scales behave in general. So this was our main aim. But which one to choose finally, it would depend on more complex research, I think.